The year is 1953. You are an unsuspecting CIA agent who has just woken up from a nap. As you rub the sleep from your eyes, you reach for the gun at your side, but it's not there. In fact, you don't recognize any of the people around you, nor do you recognize the room that you're in. Who am I? Where am I? And what the hell have they done to my cerebellum? Today, we're looking at MK Ultra. In the early days of the Cold War, there was a lot of fear surrounding mind control. If it were possible to get one over on someone by taking control of their brain, then why couldn't the Soviets do the same to Americans? At the time, hypnosis and the use of narcotics were seen as the most likely ways to achieve this effect. But the CIA wanted to know if it was possible to use something even more effective, something that would allow for total control after which the subject wouldn't remember anything. Thus began Project MK Ultra. When we think of mind control, we often think of science fiction movies where a character is made to do things against their will. But what exactly does mind control entail? Is it a switch that can be flipped when the programming is complete? Or is it more of a sliding scale where the operator can determine how much control they want to exert at any given time? And if the latter, how do they decide what that level of control should be? Let us know in the comments below. Established in 1950, the CIA set out to find a chemical that could be used to induce amnesia. It was hoped that this drug could potentially be used on enemy spies or VIPs taken captive so that they would divulge all of the information that the CIA needed. The project was kept top secret and ran until 1973, although many believe it still continues under a different name today. Drive Sidney Gottlieb headed up the project, which would experiment on thousands of subjects, including CIA employees, US military personnel, prisoners, mental patients, and prostitutes. During the first phase of the project, researchers experimented with hypnosis and narcotics such as barbiturates and amphetamines. But these methods were quickly abandoned when it was discovered that the effects were unpredictable and unreliable. Instead, the focus shifted to LSD, a substance with a reputation for causing some pretty wild and unforgettable experiences. While a lot of people might think of Ken Kesey and the merry pranksters when it comes to LSD experimentation in America, this wasn't quite the case. Kesey and his cohort were part of the CIA's equally nefarious Operation Midnight Climax, which saw the drugging of unwitting civilians so that their sexual inhibitions would be lowered. This was then observed by agents through hidden cameras. As far as Project MK Ultra, though, the CIA settled on using a combination of LSD and other drugs such as scopolamine, sometimes referred to as the zombie drug. Scopolamine causes the victim to become disoriented and unable to form new memories while still being able to follow instructions. By using both of these together, the CIA hoped to find a formula for complete behavioral control. What resulted was a series of horrific and inhumane experiments that pushed the limits of human endurance. Subjects were not only dosed without their knowledge, but they were also monitored constantly as they went about their daily lives. Anything they said or did was recorded and later reviewed by the scientists running the tests. A number of test subjects suffered greatly. Some became suicidal, others psychotic. When these terrible side effects came to light, the CIA tried to cover them up, destroying evidence and lying to Congress about the nature of the project. However, with the help of a Freedom of Information Act request, some of the truth eventually came out. There are hundreds of pages of MK Ultra files available to read online, detailing every aspect of the program from the chemicals used to the code names of the various sub-projects. One of the most chilling aspects of these documents is the matter-of-fact way in which the scientists wrote about their experiments. For example, one entry reads, "Following the injection of the subject, he left the room and was last seen entering the restroom. When he came out of the restroom, he attempted to wash his hands. After washing his hands, he proceeded to take off his shoes and socks, and when requested by the observer to put them back on, he did so. He was observed leaving the room and going directly to the hospital." It's hard to believe that what is described here was anything less than torture. To this day, there are some people who believe that MK Ultra didn't actually happen. They say the files are either fake or part of a vast government conspiracy to keep secrets hidden from the public eye. However, there are photos and videos that seem to show everything from CIA agents dosing unsuspecting citizens to high-ranking officials getting high off of their own supply of LSD. Frank Olson, a biochemist who worked on MKUltra, was found dead after apparently falling out of a window. Many believe he was murdered after finding out too much. One of the strangest aspects of MKUltra is the so-called Manchurian Candidate scenario. This refers to a sleeper agent who has been programmed to carry out an assassination at the behest of the CIA. Even stranger is the fact that this isn't just a figment of Hollywood's imagination. There was a real-life Manchurian Candidate named Harold G. Noble. He was a U.S. Army sergeant who took part in experiments on scopolamine while stationed in Korea during the Korean War. He was given 40 milligrams of the drug and ordered to report back to base the following morning. He did return to base, but he also went to West Germany where he shot and killed 3 people before turning the gun on himself. Noble had no memory of the incident, and when he was questioned about it, he claimed to have no idea what had happened. While this is probably the most famous example of the Manchurian Candidate in action, it's by no means the only one. According to the MKUltra files, there were several other cases of soldiers going rogue after taking part in the program. So what happened to all of the test subjects once the experiments were finished? Some of the lucky ones were given a choice as to whether or not they wanted to continue taking part in the research. Others were told that they had volunteered for the tests and had no recollection of the events that had transpired. Yet others were simply released without any kind of explanation. To this day, it's unknown what happened to all of the people involved in MKUltra. But there are stories of former CIA employees who are haunted by the things they experienced during their time with the agency. Whether or not these stories are true is up for debate. But one thing that cannot be denied is the fact that MKUltra was one of the darkest chapters in the history of the CIA. What do you think of MKUltra? Do you think it is possible to completely control another person's mind, or is this just science fiction? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Before we wrap up today's video, let's take a look at some of the comments from our previous installment in this series. Comment from Sudamat Haven, I can't imagine living like that. How sad is it that families were torn apart like that? Comment from Poltergeist, this is the stuff of nightmares. Comment from Olivia Johnson, it's amazing how alive the story is even today. If this was my relative, I would be enraged and determined to find out what happened. Thank you so much for watching. Now it's time to get started on today's mini-documentary. The Venona Project was the codename for a joint effort between the British and American intelligence agencies during World War II. Its aim was to decrypt messages sent by the Soviet Union's diplomatic missions in America. Although the project was highly classified and remained so until the 1990s, we now know that it played a pivotal role in the early days of the Cold War. In the late 1920s, the Soviet Union began sending secret messages to its diplomats in America. These messages were encrypted using a cipher called the Purple Machine, which was considered unbreakable at the time. However, the British and Americans were able to capture several copies of the Purple Machine during the war, and with this intelligence, they were able to begin decrypting the messages. The first step was to break the code of the Purple Machine, and this was accomplished by a team of mathematicians and cryptographers led by the Polish cryptologist Marian Rejewski. With the code broken, the British and Americans were able to read most of the messages being sent between the Soviet diplomats in America and the Soviet Union. What they found was shocking. The Soviets were spying on the Allies and feeding intelligence back to Moscow. They had agents in place at the highest levels of the US government and were able to obtain sensitive information about the Allies' plans for the post-war world. Despite the gravity of the situation, the British and Americans decided to keep the Venona Project a secret. This was done in order to avoid alarming the public and causing a panic. It was also felt that the intelligence gained from the project was too valuable to share with the Soviets. However, as the Cold War began to heat up, the pressure to share intelligence between the Allies grew. In 1948, the British and Americans finally agreed to pool their intelligence on the Soviets, and the Venona Project was declassified. This allowed the Allies to coordinate their policies and strategies towards the Soviet Union, and it is believed that this cooperation helped to prevent a nuclear war during the Cold War. Now it's time for us to ask you, what do you think of the Venona project? Was it right for the British and Americans to keep this information secret from the Soviets? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.